A millionaire went to a children's home to deliver food and saw a little girl who looked exactly like his late wife. What happened next will leave you speechless. It was a gray and rainy day in the city. The streets were covered with a blanket of water, and the sky seemed to reflect the mood of many of its inhabitants. However, in an imposing mansion located on the outskirts, a man named Alejandro walked with determination towards his garage. He was a successful businessman who had built a true business empire throughout the years. Despite his enormous wealth and privileged position, Alejandro had chosen to live a relatively simple and humble life. His home, while large and luxurious, didn't show off the usual excess and ostentation that characterize the mansions of tycoons. He opened the door of one of his vehicles, a simple but elegant SUV, and got into the driver's seat. He started the engine and left the garage, entering the flooded streets of the city. His destination was an orphanage located in one of the humblest areas of the city, a place where Alejandro used to go regularly to bring supplies and offer his support. Despite his immense purchasing power, Alejandro had not allowed himself to be blinded by wealth, nor had he forgotten his origins. He perfectly remembered how, as a child, his family had gone through times of shortage and economic hardship. That experience had marked him deeply and had driven him to dedicate a large part of his time and resources to helping those who were in similar situations to the one he had lived through. As he drove, Alejandro thought of the faces of the children who lived in the orphanage. Many of them, orphans or abandoned, had not had the opportunity to enjoy a happy and safe childhood. He struggled to give them a little joy and hope amid such adverse circumstances. Upon arriving at the orphanage, Alejandro met the director, a middle-aged woman named Sofia, who greeted him with a warm smile. "Alejandro, it's nice to see you here. The children will be delighted to see you." "Good afternoon, Sofia. I brought some groceries and clothes that I hope may be useful," said Alejandro, pointing to the cargo that accompanied him. "Thank you very much. You are very kind." "Come on, let's put everything in the kitchen," said Sofia. Together, Alejandro and Sofia entered the building and went to the kitchen, where several volunteers were preparing lunch for the children. Alejandro watched carefully as all the orphanage staff moved with agility and dedication, making sure that the little residents lacked nothing. Once they put the supplies away, Alejandro decided to take a tour of the facilities. He wanted to make sure everything was in order and that the children were doing well. He walked through the halls and greeted each of the little ones who crossed his path, giving them a smile and a word of encouragement. Alejandro stopped in front of a room where a group of children were playing cheerfully. He watched from the door as they laughed and ran around, oblivious to the difficulties that life had imposed on them. Seeing them like this filled his heart with a warmth that very few things managed to awaken in him. Suddenly his gaze fell on a girl who was sitting in a corner, away from the rest of her classmates. She was a little girl, about 8 years old, with brown hair and eyes that seemed to reflect a deep sadness. Alejandro felt a strange pang in his chest when he saw her, as if something inside him was trembling. He slowly approached the girl and knelt beside her. "Hello, little one. Why are you here alone?" he asked softly. The girl looked up and looked at him cautiously. "I don't like to play with others. I prefer to be alone," she replied in a low voice. "And why do you prefer to be alone? Don't you like to play with your friends?" he asked gently. "I don't have any friends. Everyone makes fun of me and makes me feel bad," she murmured, lowering her gaze. Alejandro felt a deep sadness when he heard those words. He knew that unfortunately, many of the children in the orphanage had suffered rejection and abuse, which had left them with emotional scars that were difficult to heal. "I understand it must be very difficult for you, but let me tell you that you are not alone. I am here, and I am very happy to meet you," said Alejandro, giving her a warm smile. The girl looked at him in surprise, as if she was not used to receiving signs of affection and attention. "Really?" she asked shyly. "Of course. My name is Alejandro, and I come here very often. I would love it if we could be friends," he replied, extending his hand. The girl hesitated for a moment, but finally shook Alejandro's hand. A small smile touched her lips. "My name is Sofia. It's a pleasure to meet you, Alejandro." Alejandro felt a warmth flood his heart. There was something about this girl that moved him deeply, something that seemed to awaken memories and feelings that he thought he had buried long ago. They spent several minutes talking and laughing together. Alejandro tried hard to make Sofia feel comfortable and safe with him, and little by little, the girl opened her heart and shared more of herself. When it was lunchtime, Alejandro accompanied Sofia and the other children to the dining room. He made sure that they served her plate with special care, noticing that the little girl had a rather modest appetite. Then he sat next to her, and they chatted animatedly as they enjoyed the meal. Alejandro was captivated by Sofia's sweetness and innocence. There was something about her that was extremely familiar to him, but he couldn't figure out what it was. Every time he looked at her, a strange sensation washed over him, a mixture of sadness and longing that he couldn't understand. When they finished eating, Alejandro said goodbye to Sofia and the rest of the children, promising them that he would return soon. Before leaving, he handed the director a generous cash donation to cover the orphanage's most pressing needs. As he drove back to his mansion, Alejandro couldn't stop thinking about Sofia. The image of that lonely and sad little girl had moved him deeply. He felt an almost inexplicable need to see her again, to give her the support and affection that she seemed to need so much. Upon reaching his home, Alejandro went to his office. There on his desk was a framed photograph of his wife, Lucia. She had been the love of his life, the woman who had accompanied him through his successes and failures, and whose tragic death had marked him indelibly. Alejandro took the portrait in his hands and looked at Lucia's smiling face. He remembered with clarity the fateful day of the accident when his world had completely collapsed. He had lost his beloved companion, but he also thought he had lost his only daughter, a little girl barely 2 years old, who was traveling with them at the time of the impact. For a long time, Alejandro had lived tormented by guilt and pain. He had tirelessly searched for his daughter, but all the leads had ended in dead ends. Finally, he had to accept that she had died in the accident, just like his wife. Now, after so many years, Sofia's image had revived those painful memories. The resemblance between the girl and Lucia was so striking that Alejandro couldn't help but wonder if it would be possible that his daughter was still alive. He left the photo in its place and leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. Maybe he should investigate Sofia's history further, find out how she got to the orphanage, and if there was any possibility, however remote, that she was his lost daughter. The mere idea of that possibility filled him with hope, and at the same time, with an overwhelming fear. If it turned out to be true, how would Sofia react to discovering that he was her father? Could Alejandro reassume that role after so long? He shook his head, trying to push those thoughts away. He didn't want to get his hopes up or speculate without being sure. It was best to stay clear-headed and proceed with caution. For now, he would focus on continuing to support the orphanage and giving Sofia all the attention and affection he could. That night, Alejandro couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in his bed, assaulted by a tangle of mixed emotions. The possibility that Sofia was his daughter excited him, but at the same time, it terrified him. Was he ready to assume that responsibility after so long? Finally, near dawn, Alejandro got up and went to his office. He turned on the computer and began to search for any information that could link Sofia to the accident that had taken his family. He spent hours going through news, records, and files, trying to find a clue that would confirm or deny his suspicions. As he progressed in his investigation, Alejandro sank deeper and deeper into a sea of doubts and intense emotions. He felt his heart pounding every time he found a new match, a new sign that seemed to indicate that Sofia was, in effect, his daughter. Finally, when the sun was beginning to peek over the horizon, Alejandro found a police report that seemed to fit perfectly with the tragedy he had experienced. According to the document, a girl of approximately 2 years of age had been found alive among the wreckage of the vehicle in which she was traveling, after the accident that had claimed the lives of her parents. Alejandro read and reread the report, feeling the world around him stop. There were the details that he remembered so vividly: the place of the accident, the time, the circumstances, and the description of the surviving girl. It matched perfectly with what he knew about his own daughter. With his heart racing, Alejandro stood up and left his office. He needed to talk to Sofia. He needed to know the truth. He had to see if this girl who had captivated his heart was indeed his lost daughter. Without wasting another minute, Alejandro got into his car and headed for the orphanage. He drove at full speed, impatient to reach his destination. Alejandro sped towards the orphanage, determined to solve the mystery that had tormented him for so long. When he finally arrived, he found Sophia, the director, and urgently explained what he had discovered. The woman listened attentively, visibly surprised by the information he was giving her. "Are you sure about what you're telling me, Alejandro? Do you really believe that Sophia could be your daughter?" "Yes, Sophia," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "I am completely convinced. All the details match, including her age and the location of the accident. Please, I need to talk to her. I need to know the truth." The director nodded slowly and went to find little Sophia. Alejandro waited nervously, feeling his heart pound in his chest. A few minutes later, Sophia appeared, accompanied by the director. When she saw Alejandro, the girl looked at him curiously, not understanding what was happening. "Sophia, dear, Mr. Alejandro has something very important to tell you," said the director softly. Alejandro approached the girl and knelt before her, taking her hands gently. "Sophia, I know this may sound strange, but do you remember anything about your parents? About how you got here?" he asked cautiously. Little Sophia frowned, trying to remember. "Well, the only thing I know is that my parents died in a car accident when I was very, very little. After that, they brought me to this orphanage," she replied sadly. Alejandro felt his heart sink upon hearing these words. He took a deep breath and continued. "Sophia, I think I may know what really happened. You see, many years ago, I also had a car accident, and in that accident, I lost my wife and my daughter. But now, after all this time, I believe you are my daughter, the one I thought had died," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. Sophia looked at him with wide eyes, not knowing how to react. The director, for her part, observed the scene with a mixture of surprise and expectation. "You mean you are my dad?" Sophia asked in a whisper. "Yes, honey, that's what I believe. I know it must be very hard to believe, but I assure you I am telling the truth." Sophia fell silent, processing Alejandro's words. The little girl was unable to assimilate all the information that had just been revealed to her. For years, she had lived believing that her parents had died in that accident, and now suddenly, this man was telling her that he was her father, the one she had thought dead. Alejandro watched the girl with his heart in his throat, anxiously awaiting her reaction. He feared that Sophia might reject the idea, or that she simply wouldn't believe him. After all, they were almost strangers to each other. Finally, Sophia looked up and stared into Alejandro's eyes. They reflected a mixture of disbelief, emotion, and above all, hope. Is it true? You really are my dad?" she asked cautiously. Alejandro nodded, feeling tears welling up in his eyes. "Yes, Sophia, I am your father. I'm so sorry I haven't been with you all these years, but I swear I didn't know you were alive," he replied, his voice choked with emotion. The girl watched him in silence for a moment, as if searching for the truth in his words. Then, without warning, she threw herself into Alejandro's arms, bursting into tears. Alejandro held her tightly, hugging her as if he was afraid she would disappear. After so many years of pain and longing, he finally had his little daughter back in his arms. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he gently stroked Sophia's hair. The director, moved by the scene, approached them and placed a hand on Alejandro's shoulder. "I'm so happy for you both," she said, her voice full of warmth. "If this is true, then this reunion is a miracle." "It is a miracle," Alejandro agreed, his eyes shining. "I can't believe that after all this time I have found my daughter. It's as if a huge weight has been lifted from my shoulders." Sophia, still sobbing, looked up at Alejandro, her expression a mixture of disbelief and hope. "So you're really my dad? You're not kidding?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No, honey, I'm not kidding. I am your father, and I'm here with you, and I'm never going to leave you again," Alejandro assured her, gently stroking her face. Sophia clung to him tightly as if afraid he would vanish. Alejandro cradled her tenderly, feeling his heart swell with a joy he had not experienced in a long time. They stayed like that for several minutes, immersed in a moment of deep emotion and connection. The orphanage director watched them with a smile on her face, touched by the scene she was witnessing. Finally, Alejandro pulled away from Sophia a little and looked at her with a warm smile. "Sophia, would you like to come live with me? I want to make up for lost time and be able to take care of you as I should have done from the beginning," he proposed softly. The girl's eyes widened and she gasped. Really? I can go with you? She asked, her voice filled with excitement. Of course, my love. Nothing would make me happier than to have you by my side, Alejandro answered, caressing her cheek. Overcome with emotion, Sophia threw herself back into her father's arms, laughing and crying at the same time. Alejandro held her tightly, his heart overflowing with happiness. At that moment, he knew that nothing and no one could take away the joy of having his daughter back. He had spent so many years immersed in pain and guilt, and now, holding her in his arms, he felt as if he had been reborn. Together, father and daughter set out to begin a new stage, full of hope, love, and the promise of a better future. Alejandro was determined to give Sophia all the love and security she had been denied for so long. And Sophia, in turn, clung to the possibility of having a family and a home that would welcome her with open arms. As Alejandro showed Sophia every corner of the house, the girl couldn't help but feel a mixture of astonishment, gratitude, and deep joy that seemed to flood every fiber of her being. After so many years of loneliness and sadness, she finally had a father who loved her and who was willing to give her everything she needed. That night, as Sophia lay in her new bed, she couldn't help but think how lucky she was. She looked around in wonder at the elegance and comfort of her room. She couldn't believe how her life had taken such an unexpected turn overnight. Gradually, sleep overcame her, and Sophia fell asleep with a smile on her lips, feeling safe and protected in this place that was now her home. Meanwhile, Alejandro sat in his office, reviewing once more the police report he had found. It was still hard for him to assimilate that after all these years he had found his lost daughter. It was as if a miracle had come true. Carefully, he put the document away and leaned back in his chair, lost in thought. Now that Sophia was with him, Alejandro knew he had a lot to rethink now that Sophia was with him. He would have to adapt to his new life as a father and make sure to give his daughter all the love and attention she deserved. It wouldn't be an easy task. After all, almost 7 years had passed since the accident, and Sophia had lived a childhood marked by loneliness and adversity. But he was determined to do everything possible to heal those wounds and build a strong and loving relationship with her. With a deep sigh, he stood up and headed to Sophia's room. He wanted to make sure the girl was comfortable and at peace in her new home. Reaching the door, he paused for a moment, watching her sleep with a look of deep peace. Alejandro approached stealthily and sat on the edge of the bed, gazing at his daughter with a mixture of tenderness and reverence. Slowly, he reached out and gently stroked her hair, as if he was afraid she would vanish before his eyes. "My little Sophia," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You don't know how much I have missed you, but now you're here with me, and I'm going to do everything in my power to protect you and take care of you. You are the most important thing I have in my life." Alejandro leaned over and placed a soft kiss on Sophia's forehead. She stirred slightly in her sleep but didn't wake up. The businessman smiled and stood up, determined to watch over his daughter's sleep. Before leaving the room, Alejandro stopped once more and looked at Sophia, his expression full of love and resolution. "I swear that I will be the father you deserve, my love," he whispered, "and I will do everything in my power so that you never suffer again." With that promise in mind, Alejandro turned off the light and closed the door, ready to dedicate every minute of his life to giving Sophia the home and family she had always longed for. The next day, Alejandro woke up very early, full of an energy and anticipation he hadn't experienced in a long time. He quickly got dressed and went down to the kitchen, ready to make a delicious breakfast for his daughter. As he cooked, he couldn't stop thinking about Sophia and how everything was going to change from that moment on. It was as if a dark cloud had finally dissipated, giving way to a future full of hope and possibilities. When breakfast was ready, Alejandro went up to Sophia's room and knocked gently on the door. He heard a soft murmur and then the sound of footsteps approaching. The door opened and Sophia appeared, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Seeing Alejandro, a huge smile lit up her face. "Dad!" she exclaimed, throwing her arms around him. Alejandro hugged her back, his heart filled with joy at hearing Sophia call him that. "Good morning, my love. Did you sleep well?" he asked, kissing her cheek. "Yes, very well," Sophia answered, beaming. "It was the best night I've had in a long time." "I'm so glad, honey. And now how about we have breakfast together?" "I made your favorite pancakes," Alejandro said, winking at her. Sophia's eyes lit up with excitement. Really? Let's go. I'm so hungry, she exclaimed, taking his hand. Together, Alejandro and Sophia went to the dining room, where he had laid out a table full of delicious food. Sophia looked at everything in amazement, unable to believe that all this was prepared especially for her. Alejandro watched his daughter with a smile, pleased to see the excitement reflected in her face. Slowly, he guided Sophia to the table and motioned for her to sit down. Go ahead, my love. All of this is for you. I hope you enjoy it, he said, serving a generous plate of pancakes with honey and fruit. Sophia picked up the fork and knife timidly, as if afraid to break something. Alejandro noticed this and came closer to her, placing a hand over hers. You don't have to be afraid, honey. This is your home now, and you can eat as much as you want, he assured her gently. The girl looked at him gratefully and began to eat, savoring the delicious taste of the pancakes. Alejandro watched her with satisfaction, seeing how his daughter enjoyed her food. Is it good? He asked, smiling. It's delicious, Sophia exclaimed, her mouth full. It's the most delicious thing I've tasted in a long time. Alejandro felt his heart swell with pride. Knowing he had prepared something his daughter liked so much filled his soul with happiness. During breakfast, Alejandro and Sophia chatted animatedly, laughing and sharing stories. The girl told her father some details of her life in the orphanage, and he listened attentively, moved by the difficulties his daughter had faced. When they finished eating, Alejandro accompanied Sophia to the living room. They sat on a comfortable sofa, and he asked the girl what she would like to do. Well, I don't know, Sophia answered shyly. I have never had many things to play with or do. Alejandro gave her a warm smile and took her hand gently. Well, now you have a whole world of possibilities, my love. How about we go to the city, and I buy you some toys and new clothes? We could spend the day together and have fun, he suggested excitedly. Sophia's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Really? We can go? She asked breathlessly. Of course, honey. I want you to have everything you want, Alejandro assured her, gently squeezing her hand. Without wasting any more time, Alejandro and Sophia left the mansion and headed for the city center. During the drive, the girl couldn't contain her excitement as she looked out the window with wide eyes. When they arrived at the shopping area, Alejandro led Sophia to a huge toy store. The little girl stopped at the entrance, fascinated by the variety of items on display. Look, Dad, there's so much stuff, she exclaimed, not knowing where to start. Alejandro smiled at her tenderly and said, Go ahead, honey. Choose anything you want. Today is a special day, and you can have whatever you want. Sophia looked at him with a mixture of excitement and gratitude, and then went into the store, walking down the aisles enthusiastically. Alejandro followed closely behind, watching with pride as his daughter explored every corner. For hours, father and daughter had fun choosing different toys, books, clothes, and other items. Sophia was beaming with happiness, unable to believe that all of this was hers. When they finally left the store, Sophia carried several bags filled with her new treasures. Alejandro looked at her with a smile, feeling his heart was about to burst with joy. Thank you, Dad. This has been incredible, Sophia exclaimed, hugging Alejandro tightly. The days following the revelation of the truth were intense for both Alejandro and Sophia. The businessman still couldn't believe that after so many years, he had found his daughter, and that they now had the opportunity to rebuild the family bonds that had been taken from them. Sophia, for her part, was on a roller coaster of emotions. On the one hand, she was overwhelmed by the news that Alejandro was her father, whom she had presumed dead. But at the same time, she felt deeply relieved and happy to know she had a family who loved her and wanted to take care of her. During the first few days, father and daughter spent long hours talking, trying to catch up and understand how they had come to be in this situation. Alejandro told Sophia all the details of the tragic accident that had taken her mother from them and separated them. The girl listened intently, touched by the pain and guilt reflected in her father's words. I can't even imagine what you must have suffered, Dad, Sophia said, taking Alejandro's hand affectionately. It must have been terrible to lose Mom and think that I had died too. Alejandro gently squeezed his daughter's hand, feeling tears welling up in his eyes. It was the worst experience of my life, my love, he admitted, his voice trembling. Losing your mother was devastating, and believing that I had also lost you was like my whole world collapsing. Sophia moved closer to him and hugged him tightly, giving him the comfort he so badly needed. Alejandro returned the hug, letting the tears flow freely down his cheeks. "But now you are here with me," Sophia whispered, "and you don't have to be alone anymore. We are going to be together, Dad." Alejandro nodded, holding his daughter tighter. "Yes, my love. You're all I have left of your mother, and I'm not going to let anything or anyone separate us again." They remained like this for several minutes, immersed in a moment of deep connection and understanding. Sophia knew that despite everything they had been through, her father loved her with all his heart, and Alejandro, for his part, felt infinitely grateful to have recovered his daughter, whom he had thought lost forever. Little by little, Sophia began to feel more comfortable and safe in her new home. The huge mansion, which at first had seemed so imposing and overwhelming, became a warm and welcoming refuge thanks to Alejandro's love and dedication. He strived to make Sophia feel loved and protected. He prepared her favorite meals, accompanied her in her games and activities, and devoted long hours to her care and attention. For Alejandro, nothing was more important than giving his daughter all the love and stability that had been absent from her life for so many years. One afternoon, as they were walking through the property's gardens, Sophia stopped and looked at Alejandro, her expression serious. "Dad, can I ask you something?" she said timidly. "Of course, my love. What's wrong?" Alejandro answered, stopping beside her. "Well, I was wondering if you know what happened to my mom," Sophia said, her voice a mixture of curiosity and caution. "The director of the orphanage told me that my parents died in an accident. But do you know something else?" Alejandro felt his heart sink when he heard that question. He knew that at some point he would have to address this painful subject with Sophia, but he wasn't sure how to do it. He took a deep breath and took his daughter's hands in his. "Yes, honey, I know what happened to your mom," he began softly. "You see, your mother and I had a terrible car accident many years ago. I managed to get out unharmed, but your mom—" He paused, feeling the tears welling up in his eyes. "Your mom didn't survive." Sophia's eyes widened as the news clearly shocked her. "So, my mom died in the accident?" she asked, her voice trembling. Alejandro nodded sadly. "Yes, my love. It was a terrible tragedy. I loved her with all my heart, and losing her it was the most painful thing I have ever experienced," he confessed, gently squeezing Sophia's hands. The girl was silent for a moment, processing the information. Then cautiously she asked again, "And what happened to me? You said you thought I had died in the accident too." Alejandro took a deep breath before answering. "Yes, honey. After the accident, they found no trace of you in the vehicle, and we all assumed that you had also passed away," he explained, his voice catching. "I searched tirelessly for you, but I could never find you. I thought I had lost my family forever." Sophia looked at him with an expression of deep sadness. "Then how is it that I'm here with you now?" she whispered. "That's what I still don't fully understand," Alejandro admitted. "Until recently, I knew nothing about you. It was a complete coincidence that I found you at the orphanage and that I managed to discover that you were my lost daughter." Sophia nodded slowly, trying to assimilate all the information. Alejandro watched her with concern, fearing that the revelation might be too overwhelming for her. "I know this must be very hard to understand, my love," he said, gently squeezing her hands. "But I want you to know that no matter what happens, I will be here for you. You are the most important thing in my life, and I am not going to let you go ever again." Sophia's eyes filled with tears, and without warning, she threw herself at Alejandro, hugging him tightly. "I believe you, Dad," she murmured against his chest. "I know you would never hurt me, and I'm glad you were able to find me after all this time." Alejandro held her tenderly, feeling his heart fill with relief and gratitude. Despite the tragic story behind their reunion, Sophia seemed willing to forgive and embrace the new opportunity before them. "I'm also glad, my life," Alejandro whispered, kissing her head softly. "And I swear I'm going to do everything in my power to make up for everything you've been through." Sophia pulled away slightly and looked at him with a smile. "I know you will, Dad. And I want us to be a family. A real family." Alejandro smiled back, his soul filled with a peace and joy he hadn't felt in a long time. "That's exactly what we'll be, my love. A family. United forever." Father and daughter embraced once more, sealing with that gesture their commitment to building a new future together, full of love, understanding, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. In the days that followed, Alejandro and Sofia dedicated much of their time to strengthening the family bonds that had been so cruelly interrupted. Together they explored the huge mansion, played in the gardens, and shared long conversations filled with laughter and anecdotes. Sofia, who had once been a shy and reserved girl, gradually blossomed under her father's warm affection. Alejandro made sure to give her all the support and attention she needed, making the little girl feel safe, loved, and protected. Beyond the material wealth that surrounded him, what truly filled Alejandro with happiness was seeing how Sofia was regaining the joy and innocence that had been taken from her for so many years. To see her smile, play, and enjoy life as a child should was the greatest treasure he could have. However, as the days passed, Alejandro began to notice that Sofia was sometimes thoughtful and distant. He sensed that despite how much he strived to provide her with a loving home, something was still troubling his daughter. One afternoon, as they were having a snack together, Alejandro dared to broach the subject. "Sofia, my love, is there anything bothering you? I've noticed you've been a little distant the last few days," he asked softly. Sofia looked up from her plate and gave him a hesitant look. "Well, there's something that has been on my mind," she admitted, nervously fiddling with her napkin. Alejandro moved closer to her and took her hand affectionately. "You can trust me, honey. You know you can talk to me about anything." Sofia nodded and took a breath before continuing. "It's about what happened to my mom. You've told me what happened, but there are still some things I don't understand," she said timidly. Alejandro gently squeezed her hand, preparing to address this painful subject. "Tell me, my love, what is it that worries you?" he asked patiently. "Well, you've told me that my mom died in the accident, but do you know how it all happened? What exactly happened?" Sofia asked, looking down. Alejandro sighed deeply. He knew sooner or later he would have to share these details with his daughter, however painful they might be. "You see, Sofia, the accident happened on a rainy night when we were coming home after spending the afternoon with you," he began to relate, his voice thick with emotion. "We were in the car, your mother, you and I. Suddenly, a distracted driver crossed our path, and we couldn't avoid the crash." Sofia listened carefully, hanging on to his every word. "The impact was terrible. I managed to get out with some injuries. But your mother—" Alejandro paused, feeling the tears welling up. "Your mother took the brunt of the impact. The paramedics fought to save her, but her injuries were too severe. She didn't survive." Sofia looked at him with tearful eyes, clearly affected by the tragedy. "And what happened to me? How did I end up in the orphanage?" she asked, her voice trembling. "That's what torments me the most, my love," confessed Alejandro, squeezing his daughter's hand tighter. "After the accident, the rescuers couldn't find you. We searched desperately, but there was no trace of you in the vehicle. We all assumed you had passed away too." Tears began to roll down Sofia's cheeks, and Alejandro pulled her close, hugging her tenderly. "I don't understand, Dad," the girl sobbed against his chest. "How is it possible that I survived, and nobody knew? Where was I all this time?" "That's what I would like to know, my love," Alejandro answered, gently stroking Sofia's hair. "For years I looked for clues, any information that could help me find you, but everything ended in dead ends. Finally, I had to accept that you were lost forever." Sofia clung to him, crying bitterly. Alejandro consoled her patiently, his own heart breaking at the sight of his daughter's pain. "Then how is it that I'm here with you now?" Sofia asked between sobs. "What happened?" Alejandro sighed deeply before replying. "That's what I still don't fully understand, my life," he admitted. "When I found you at the orphanage, it was as if destiny had given us a second chance. Seeing you there with those sad eyes and that familiarity that felt so familiar to me made me suspect that you might be my lost daughter." Sofia looked at him intently, listening to his every word. "So I started to investigate, to look for clues that would confirm or rule out my suspicions," continued Alejandro. "And after a lot of effort, I managed to find a police report that matched the details of the accident. It mentioned that a little girl had been found alive in the wreckage of the vehicle. Sophia's eyes widened in shock at that revelation. You mean, I was that girl? She asked breathlessly. Alejandro nodded solemnly. Yes, my love. You were that baby who miraculously managed to survive the accident. But for some reason, no one knew about your existence until I found you at the orphanage, he explained regretfully. Finally, when Sophia calmed down a bit, Alejandro looked at her with an expression full of affection. How about we go for a walk after breakfast? He suggested with a smile. I think some fresh air will do us both good. Sophia nodded, a faint smile appearing on her face. That sounds like a great idea, Dad, she replied, wiping the tears from her face. Together, father and daughter enjoyed a delicious breakfast and then went for a walk in the mansion's gardens. Alejandro watched Sophia tenderly, noting how the tension and anguish slowly seemed to leave her body. As they walked, Alejandro decided to address another issue that worried him. Sophia, my love, there is something else I would like to talk to you about, he said gently. The girl looked at him questioningly. What is it, Dad? She asked curiously. Alejandro took a breath before continuing. Well, you see, I know all of this has been a very hard blow for you, my love, he said, looking at Sophia with a serious expression. To suddenly find me and discover the truth about your past must have been overwhelming. Sophia nodded silently, waiting for her father to continue. And I'm worried that in the midst of all this chaos, you have neglected something important. Alejandro added gently, your childhood. The girl looked at him, not understanding what he was getting at. My childhood? What do you mean, Dad? She asked, confused. Alejandro stopped and took Sophia's hands in his. What I mean, my love, is that you have been through too much suffering and adversity for a girl your age, he explained sadly. And I want to make sure that from now on, you can enjoy a happy and carefree childhood, as you deserve. Sophia looked at him with a mixture of emotion and gratitude. Dad, she began to say, but Alejandro gently interrupted her. I know that nothing I do can erase the pain and loneliness you have experienced, the businessman continued, but I want you to know that I am here with you, and I will do everything in my power to make it up to you. Sophia's eyes filled with tears, and Alejandro pulled her towards him, wrapping her in a warm hug. I want you to forget all your worries and just enjoy being a child, Alejandro murmured, stroking her hair. I want you to play, to have fun without having to think about anything else. Sophia clung to him, sobbing softly. But Dad, what about the truth of what happened to me? What if we never find out? She asked anxiously. Alejandro pulled away slightly and looked at her with determination. That doesn't matter now, my love, he assured her. What matters is that you are here with me, and I'm going to do everything I can to protect you and take care of you. Sophia watched him silently, taking in her father's words. I know you're scared and that you want to find answers, Alejandro continued, and I promise you that I won't rest until we do. But for now, I want you to focus on being happy, on enjoying the childhood you've been denied. A soft smile touched Sophia's lips. Really, Dad? Can I forget about all of this for a while? She asked shyly. Alejandro nodded, caressing her cheek tenderly. Yes, my love, I want you to forget about your worries and focus on being the child you deserve to be, he assured her. I will take care of everything else. Sophia hugged him tightly, feeling a huge weight lifting off her shoulders. Thank you, Dad, she murmured, her voice filled with emotion. Thank you for being here with me. Alejandro held her closer, kissing her head with infinite tenderness. You are the most important thing to me, Sophia, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make up for everything you've been through. They stayed embraced for several minutes, enjoying the warmth and security of their newly discovered father-daughter bond. When they finally parted, Alejandro took Sophia's hand, and they continued their walk through the gardens. Along the way, he pointed out the different species of flowers and trees, highlighting details he knew his daughter would love. Sophia listened intently, letting herself be carried away by excitement and curiosity. Her eyes no longer reflected the shadow of suffering, but a spark of genuine interest and joy. Alejandro watched his daughter with pride and tenderness, his heart overflowing with a joy he hadn't felt in a long time. When they returned to the mansion, Alejandro suggested they have dinner together in the dining room, taking the opportunity to discuss plans he had for Sophia. My love, you know you're the most important priority in my life right now, he began seriously, "and I want you to know that I will do everything I can to give your childhood everything it deserves. That's why I've been thinking about some things that might make you happy," Alejandro added with a smile. "For example, how would you like it if I hired a personal tutor to help you with your studies? And would you also like to take music or art classes?" Sophia's eyes lit up with excitement. "Really, Dad? Can I do all those things?" she asked breathlessly. Alejandro nodded, pleased by his daughter's reaction. "Of course, my life. I want you to have all the opportunities that were denied to you at the orphanage," he assured her with a loving look. "And if there's anything else you want, don't hesitate to tell me. I will do everything in my power so that you can enjoy a happy childhood." Sophia got up from her seat and went around the table to hug Alejandro tightly. "Thank you, Dad," she exclaimed, giggling. "You're the best dad in the world." Alejandro hugged her back, his heart brimming with joy. "You are my greatest treasure, my love," he murmured, "and I will do everything in my power so that you never feel alone or unhappy again." Sophia pulled away slightly and looked at him radiantly. "With you by my side, Dad, I know I will have everything I need," she assured him with a smile. "I'm going to enjoy everything you offer me." Alejandro smiled back, moved by the happiness that radiated from his daughter. "I'm so glad to hear you say that, my life," he said, gently stroking her cheek. "Now how about after dinner, we go choose some new books and toys for your room?" Sophia nodded enthusiastically, and father and daughter became engrossed in a lively conversation about her interests and preferences. As Alejandro listened to her talk with such excitement, he felt deeply grateful to be able to give his daughter everything she had been denied for so long. Seeing Sophia flourish under his care and attention filled him with an indescribable joy. That night, when Sophia went to bed surrounded by her new treasures, she couldn't help but feel an immense gratitude towards Alejandro. Despite all they had been through, her father had proven to be an exceptional man, full of love and determination to offer her a home and a family. Sophia fell asleep with a smile on her lips, feeling safer and happier than she had ever been in her life. Alejandro, meanwhile, went to his office, determined to continue his investigation into the whereabouts of the mysterious nurse. Although he had decided to give Sophia a break from all the worries, he would not give up his search for the truth. He turned on his computer and reviewed the reports and documents he had collected once more. According to the information his lawyers had gathered, the nurse in question had disappeared without a trace shortly after the accident. However, Alejandro was not going to give up. He was determined to find her and discover what had really happened to Sophia on that fateful day. As he typed frantically, an idea began to take shape in his mind. What if the nurse had been part of a more complex plot? What if someone else was behind Sophia's disappearance? Alejandro paused for a moment, his heart pounding. Maybe, just maybe, the accident hadn't been a simple tragedy, but something far more sinister. Without wasting any more time, he contacted his most trusted lawyers and ordered them to thoroughly investigate any indication of suspicious activity surrounding the accident. He was determined to get to the bottom of this mystery, no matter what he had to do. Meanwhile, in the comfort of her room, Sophia slept peacefully, oblivious to her father's efforts to uncover the truth and unaware of the dangers that might be lurking in the shadows. Several weeks passed, during which Alejandro completely immersed himself in his search without neglecting his commitment to giving Sophia the happy childhood she deserved. During the day, father and daughter enjoyed walks, games, and activities that filled the little girl's heart with joy. Alejandro hired the best tutors and teachers, ensuring Sophia could explore and develop all her talents and abilities. The girl, for her part, flourished more every day, gradually forgetting the shadows of her past and fully embracing this new life, full of opportunities and love. But at night, when Sophia had gone to bed, Alejandro would shut himself in his office, working tirelessly to solve the mystery of her disappearance. After several weeks of exhaustive investigations, his lawyers discovered a crucial piece of information. Apparently, the nurse who had disappeared after the accident had been hired by an insurance company with a dubious reputation. Alejandro felt alarmed when he learned this. Could this company have had something to do with Sophia's disappearance? Finally, after several weeks of intense investigations, the authorities managed to dismantle the child trafficking ring and apprehend those responsible. Among those arrested was the nurse who had vanished after the accident. Alejandro felt a huge weight lifting off his shoulders when he heard this news. At last, after all these years, it seemed they were close to uncovering the truth about what had happened to Sophia. Without wasting any time, he went to the girl and told her what he had just found out. Sophia listened intently, unable to believe that they were finally getting close to the answers she had been searching for. "So, that nurse kidnapped me?" she asked, her eyes wide. Alejandro nodded gravely. "It seems so, my love. It seems so, my love," Alejandro answered, taking her hands gently. "According to the information the authorities have obtained, she took you from the hospital and handed you over to that child trafficking ring." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. But why would she do such a thing? What did she have to gain from all of this? She asked, distressed. Alejandro looked at her sadly. "Apparently, that insurance company was paying her to get rid of you," he revealed, his voice thick with emotion. "I suppose they wanted to avoid having to pay the compensation for your death." Sophia stared at him in shock. She couldn't believe the cruelty those people were capable of. "So, all this time they kept me captive?" she asked, her voice trembling. Alejandro nodded, gently squeezing her hands. "Yes, my love. Unfortunately, it seems so," he confirmed sadly. "But it's all over now. Those monsters have been arrested, and you're safe with me." Sophia looked at him with tears in her eyes. "What happens now, Dad?" she asked, her voice full of anguish. "How will I make up for all the time they stole from me?" Alejandro pulled her close and hugged her tenderly. "Don't worry, my life," he whispered, gently stroking her hair. "We're going to face this together. I will be here for you every step of the way." Sophia clung to him, feeling a lump form in her throat. Alejandro held her tighter, kissing her forehead softly. "Listen to me, Sophia," he said firmly. "No one is going to hurt you again. I will protect you with my life if necessary." The girl looked at him with a mixture of fear and hope. "You promise, Dad? You promise that you will always be with me?" she asked anxiously. Alejandro nodded, his expression full of determination. "I swear it, my love," he replied with conviction. "You are the most important thing I have in my life, and I'm going to do everything in my power to keep you safe." Sophia clung to him, feeling some of the tension leave her body. "Thank you, Dad," she murmured with a timid smile. "Thank you for not giving up." Alejandro cradled her tenderly, his heart swelling with pride and love. "Never, my life. You're my reason for being, and I will fight to the end to protect you and give you the home you deserve." They remained embraced for several minutes, enjoying the security and love that emanated from their deep bond. Little by little, Sophia relaxed, feeling trust and hope flood her heart again. When they finally parted, Alejandro gave her a warm smile. "How about we go visit the children at the orphanage this afternoon?" he suggested softly. "I think it would be good for you to reunite with your friends." Sophia's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "I would love to, Dad," she exclaimed with a radiant smile. Together, father and daughter went to the orphanage, where they were greeted with great commotion and joy. The children surrounded Sophia with effusive hugs and affectionate welcomes, happy to see her again. The director of the orphanage, Doña Sofia, approached Alejandro with a grateful look. "Alejandro, what a joy to see you both again," she exclaimed, warmly shaking his hand. "And Sophia, my girl, how you have grown. I am so glad that you have found a home." Sophia gave her a warm smile. "Thank you, Doña Sofia. I am very happy here with my dad," she replied, affectionately taking Alejandro's hand. The director gave them a look full of emotion. "I'm so happy for you both," she said with a smile. "I know you've been through very difficult times, but now that you're together, I know you can overcome any obstacle." Alejandro nodded, gently squeezing Sofia's hand. "That's right, Doña Sofia. Together we're going to face everything that comes our way," he said with determination. The director looked at them with pride and satisfaction. "I'm glad to hear that, Alejandro," she replied sincerely. "You deserve to be happy." After spending a pleasant time with the children at the orphanage, Alejandro and Sofia returned to the mansion, feeling more united and stronger than ever. During dinner, Alejandro noticed that Sofia seemed more relaxed and at ease. She excitedly told him about the games and activities she had shared with her friends and thanked him once more for rescuing her from that terrible situation. Alejandro listened attentively, feeling deeply grateful to be able to give his daughter the life she had been denied for so many years.